Hello, beautiful souls. It is Harmony Healer, your mental health therapist. Today, we will explore the art of self-compassion, managing daily stress, and nurturing emotional well-being. Let us create a life of harmony, one step at a time. Mental health is defined as a state or condition on which an individual feels a sense of well-being. This gives him or her the capacity to live life in fulfillment of what he or she wants to achieve, in accordance with the available resources. This condition also provides an individual the capacity to be resilient to the stresses he meets and to respond to these challenges without having to compromise his well-being. This also makes him productive and fruitful for himself and his community. Mental wellness could also be defined as the lack of mental problems or disorders. People who do not present diagnosable behaviors that could qualify as a mental disorder are seen as mentally healthy. For example, someone who has an obsession with things may not necessarily have a mental disorder like obsession. Thus, he is said to have mental wellness. But when this obsession is combined with an unrelenting compulsion to do the object of obsession, the person may already be diagnosed with a mental disorder called obsessive-compulsive disorder or OCD. It could also be seen as a positive element in an individual's personality, which makes it possible to enhance mental wellness regardless of a diagnosable mental disorder. This definition covers a person's capacity to live life to the fullest, to respond well to his environment through the conscious or unconscious use of coping mechanisms, and to be able to balance emotional as well as psychological well-being in relation to a constant flow of experiences. Mental health across culture. The World Health Organization believes that there is no single definition for mental health due to differences in culture. What could be mentally healthy or acceptable behavior in one culture may present something too eccentric in another. For example, cannibalistic behavior in some tribes living in remote areas is highly regarded as a religious practice. However, in the majority of the urbanized world, this could be seen as barbaric or insane. Disruption in mental health. Abnormalities in mental health could lead to a number of problems with various representations. Some people with mental illnesses have aggressive behaviors, while others are withdrawn and lack social interest. Each type of disorder has its own signs and symptoms. Therefore, diagnosis as well as treatment vary depending on the nature of the mental health problem. There are several factors that disrupt mental health, including environment or upbringing, biological makeup of a person, pre-programmed instructions in the genes, medical disorders, traumatic experiences such as loss and abuse, and substance abuse. While one factor could be dominant than the other, all of these are contributors to the development of the majority of mental health disorders. In some cases, a single factor may be sufficient to trigger the disorder, but the majority of disorders require an accumulation of experience that constantly challenges the well-being of a person. What preserves mental health? The preservation of mental health is highly dependent on the capacity of the person to 1. Blend in his environment and handle its stresses. 2. Achieve a good internal balance in his personality that is sufficient to give a stable character and, 3. Create a good perspective that would limit the damages of negative experiences. For some people, a good support system such as a sympathetic family or a strong social group may work well to safeguard mental health. It is amazing how a lump of gray matter could manipulate all the systems in our body, in the most systematic way possible with all the intricacies and complex functioning. But what is queer about this stuff, the organ we call the brain, is that it could malfunction in a way that it could result in single or multiple representations of mental health problems, all in an individual. Clinical research and laboratory observations consistently arrive at a conclusion that mental health disorders are products of the accumulation and interaction of several contributing factors. It would have been easier to identify each disorder if there was only one cause for all mental health disorders, but that simply isn't the truth. In reality, all mental disorders could be rooted in several causes such as an environment, that is conducive to the development of a mental disorder, or individual genetic makeup, that programs the brain to develop into something non-normal. Saying that, it is all about the pathological makeup of the brain, that causes mental health disorders is simplistic, to say the least. Looking at the strange development of these disorders would reveal that there are actually at least 3 contributing factors, that may be seen as potential causes, all of which have varying degrees. This means that a particular culprit could be more dominant than the other. First, with the physical causes. This bracket of causes is biological in nature. Each individual has a distinct and unique biological makeup that dictates the direction of his health, may it be physical or mental. Some people are born with an inherent tendency to develop a specific mental disorder, in comparison with other people, while others are less prone to risks. This cause also covers the genetic makeup of an individual, the biological makeup and the events in life that affect the physical body, such as a trauma on the head or substance abuse. Second are the environmental or social causes. Nature versus nurture has been a great debate in the scientific community, but research confirms that a person experiences a split half of both. Nature, of course, are the physical attributes of an individual, while nurture reflects more on the social structures and physical, emotional and mental environments to which an individual was exposed to. This factor tells us more on how an individual grew up, the interaction of influences that affected all facets of his growth, and the mechanisms he used to cope with a specific environment. It is observable that some mental disorders are caused primarily by the consequences of experience brought about by the environment. For example, people, especially children, living in a stressful, chaotic, and unstable environment are more likely to develop mental illnesses than those individuals living in a peaceful environment. This consequence is due to the fact that there are certain social and environmental components that may become risk factors to the development of mental health problems. Third is the psychological factor. This particular factor tells us more about the psychological state of a person, his coping mechanisms to certain life events that could otherwise end up with psychological disorders, his perception of himself and his environment, and thought patterns that affect his mental health. For example, someone who has gone beyond the limit of his stress coping capacity is likely to break down mentally as a result of the psyche's automatic lockdown to protect itself. For the majority of people lacking mental health, it is often the case of triggering the mental health to break down through series factors that have eventually contributed to the cause of mental health disorder. Until our next session, remember that progress is a journey, not a destination.